You have seen this photograph, everyone has. 6 men leaning into the wind on a bare hilltop, straining together to push a flag up into the sky. It is the most famous image of the Second World War, one of the most reproduced photographs ever taken, printed on stamps and posters and the walls of 100 million homes, a picture so iconic it stopped being a photograph and became a symbol. But almost no one who knows the image knows the men in it, and almost no one knows that for one of them, being in this picture was the beginning of the end. He survived the deadliest battle of his life to stand at the base of that pole, and then the fame that came with it slowly took him apart. The photograph was taken on the island of Iwo Jima in early 1945, on the 5th day of one of the most savage battles in the history of the Marine Corps. Iwo Jima was a black volcanic hell of tunnels and hidden guns, and taking it cost thousands of American lives in a matter of weeks. On its highest point, a mountain called Suribachi, a group of Marines raised the American flag, and a photographer caught them doing it, and the image flashed home to a war-weary country like a jolt of pure hope. It was everything the nation wanted to feel: teamwork, triumph, the flag going up. It became a sensation overnight, and the country wanted the men in it. Of the 6 who raised that flag, 3 were killed in the fighting on Iwo Jima not long after. The other 3 survived, and the moment they were identified, they were pulled out of the war and shipped home to be the living stars of the photograph, sent on a national tour to shake hands, give speeches, and sell the war bonds that funded the fighting. 2 of them found a way to carry it. The third could not, because for him the picture was not a triumph, it was a wound. His name was Ira Hayes, a Pima Marine, from a poor reservation in paratrooper, a quiet, serious young man who had volunteered and fought his way through the worst of Iwo Jima. It is all documented in the Marine Corps records. He was, by any honest measure, a real combat hero. And the strange, cruel thing is that the fame the photograph gave him is exactly what he could not survive. One quick thing before we go on, then straight back to Ira. If these forgotten stories matter to you, a subscribe helps them reach the people who'd care. Thank you. Now back to the man the picture made famous. To understand why it broke him, you have to understand what he carried. Ira Hayes had been in the thick of the fighting on Iwo Jima, and he had seen friends, real friends, killed beside him on that island. To him, those men, the dead, were the heroes, and he never stopped believing it. So when he was suddenly paraded across the United States as a celebrated hero for a photograph, cheered by crowds, asked to smile and perform, all he could feel was that it was wrong. He had, in his own mind, simply helped push up a pole, a small thing, while better men had given everything and gotten no parade at all. Being celebrated for it, while they lay under the black sand of Iwo Jima, felt to him less like an honor than a betrayal of them. He wanted to go back to his unit. Instead, the war ended, the tour ended, and he was left alone with all of it. There is a particular cruelty in what the photograph asked of him. It froze a single instant, stripped of everything around it, and made that instant stand for victory itself. And then it demanded that the living men in it embody that victory on cue, over and over, for crowds who needed to believe in it. But Ira Hayes had not been in a moment of triumph. He had been in a battle that killed his friends, and the photograph could not hold any of that, the fear, the loss, the cost. He was asked to smile for the clean, simple story the picture told, while carrying the messy, terrible truth the picture left out. No one meant to be cruel, but being made the smiling face of a version of events that erased his dead friends was a weight he was never built to carry, and it pressed on him without relief. What came after is the part the photograph never shows. Ira Hayes came home from the war carrying wounds that no one in that era had the words for, the kind of deep trauma we would now recognize and try to treat, and back then simply called nothing at all. He carried the survivor's guilt and the memory of the island, and on top of it the impossible weight of being a permanent public symbol, recognized everywhere, forever expected to be the hero in the picture. And he carried, too, the ordinary hard burden of being a Native American in the America of that time, facing discrimination and closed doors that his fame did nothing to open. It was too much. He struggled to hold work and a life together. He drank to quiet what he could not otherwise quiet, and the celebrated hero of the most famous photograph in the country slowly came apart, mostly out of the public eye that had once demanded so much of him. In January 1955, 10 years after the flag went up on Suribachi, Ira Hayes was found dead near his home on the reservation in Arizona, succumbed to exposure and the effects of drink after a cold night. He was 32 years old. He died poor and largely alone, a world away from the crowds that had once cheered the man in the photograph. The image he had helped create was by then immortal, cast in bronze, printed everywhere, guaranteed to outlast everyone who had ever seen it. And the man himself was gone, worn down and used up, one more casualty of a war that had officially ended a decade before. It finally finished with him. Open that gap between the immortal picture and the discarded man is the whole point. It would be easy and wrong to reduce him to how he died. The drinking and the decline were not the whole of Ira Hayes. They were what happened to a good and brave man who was given no help with wounds that had no name yet, and who was handed a burden of fame that would have tested anyone. Between the Bond tours and end there were stretches where he worked and tried and reached for something steadier, and the reservation that had raised him took him back. He was not weak. He was injured, in ways the country of his time neither understood nor cared to treat, and then left largely to manage it alone. Judging him for breaking under, that says far more about what we failed to offer him than about who he was. In the years after his death, the country began, slowly, to reckon with what it had done to him. His story was told and retold, and a famous folk song was written about his life, carrying his name to people who had never known the face behind the photograph, and turning Ira Hayes into something he had never been allowed to be while he lived. Understood. He became a symbol of a different kind, no longer just an anonymous figure in a triumphant image, but a reminder of the human cost hidden inside our monuments, and of how easily a country can celebrate a picture while failing the person in it. That is the true story, and it is worth holding on to precisely because the photograph is so famous. The image is perfect and eternal. 6 men, 1 flag, 1 shining moment of unity. The truth underneath it is human and broken and sad. A modest, brave man who fought through hell, lost his friends, could not bear to be called a hero in their place, and was slowly destroyed by a fame he never wanted, dying young and poor while his image sold bonds and filled museums. Ira Hayes deserves to be remembered as more than a shape in a picture. He was a real Marine who did his duty, grieved his dead, and paid a price for that photograph that none of the millions who admired it ever had to pay. The flag in the image will fly forever. The least we can do is remember the man beneath it.